Welcome back to Grit Gym, guys. We have Elias Notus here. He's from flavorhacker.com, and we're going to talk about building your own healthy lifestyle and getting to the point in your life where, or how the path that he took to figure out what he wants to do with his life and what has meaning to him. And Elias, can you kind of introduce yourself to the Grit Gym tribe and tell them a little bit about you?
Yeah, what's up, Grit Gym? I'm Elias. I'm building a brand right now that I'm super excited about called Flavor Hacker. And it's largely one of those projects where you like kind of build it because you're scratching your own itch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I always had this sort of dysfunctional relationship with food when I got to adulthood, when I got out into the real world and I could kind of choose my own dishes, right? And I got, super addicted to all this stuff that's not really good for you unless you're trying to be a sumo wrestler, right? So put on a lot of weight in my 20s. And
whatever you're into.
Yeah, right. And so my path back to fitness, because I was really athletic as a teenager. I was a pretty high level competitive martial artist and could never put on weight at all because I was always burning off more than I was consuming on a daily basis. And then when that, and then I just thought, I was like, oh, I have a fast metabolism. No, I just was working all the time. You know what I mean? So, and I just kind of realized at a certain point after a lot of like 90-day challenges, I'd get in crazy condition, I'd get super ripped, and then I'd go back to eating my normal food and I'd get fat again, either slowly or quite quickly, depending on the speed of things. So, and I finally was like, dude, I have to find stuff that I actually enjoy eating, that I would eat if I weren't on a diet or if I weren't trying to be healthy per se, right?
Yep.
If I can find those foods that make me happy and like feed your soul, feed your happiness that you can share with family and friends and loved ones, then that's the cornerstone for that balanced lifestyle for me, right? And I think that's what's missing for a lot of people. So
I couldn't agree more. There's just no use in being miserable through the whole process of eating well. It doesn't have to taste like crap.
Yeah. And I have some friends, Las Vegas has a pretty active bodybuilding and fitness model community here. And it's a healthy city, quote, air quotes, healthy city, but on the cosmetic end of healthy, if that makes sense, right? Sure. So you see a lot of like really, really pretty people at the gym, amazing physiques, really good condition. And some of my gym friends, I'm like, you can't possibly be happy eating that. And they'll post on their Instagram account, they're like, I have all my food prepped for the whole week. And it's like 12 identical boxes of chicken and steamed broccoli. I'm dude, you're driving me nuts. Seriously.
Yeah, it just has to be so boring that it's insane. I can't imagine just well, I can because I did it, but it's just like at some point you have to just adjust and be like, am I actually enjoying this? Like, this is a huge part of my life.
For sure.
And I'm getting nothing out of it. Like, does it need to be this way? I think that's kind of the story, is helping people to not have to do that.
For sure. And my background's really unique. I've got about 25 years into a restaurant career now, and I went away from it for a short time, came back to it, but I've done everything, man. I started as kitchen help when I was in high school at literally at the little family run deli that was next door to my karate dojo, right? So I'd go there and I'd work out in the morning, and I'd go and I'd work a few hours for their lunch rush and like break down chickens and chop up vegetables and stuff. And that was the first time I'd ever did anything in a kitchen. I'd go back and do more workouts in the afternoon. But, and that later I got into the fine dining world and I gravitated towards wine. So I worked as a sommelier for years and been very fortunate. Las Vegas is a great area to do, or a city to do wine in, because some people come in here and they quite literally have, play money that the casino gives them to, if they gamble enough money, right? They get to get pretty much whatever they want. So, me selling wines in the $1,000 to $10,000 range is not like something that happens once a year. It's, it happens quite a bit. So it's a fun environment to sell wine in.
That's crazy. I didn't know that happened.
Yeah, it's cool. But I also have been very fortunate. I've worked in 4 different Michelin-starred restaurants, 1 2-star, 1 3-star Michelin restaurant, and to see the stuff behind the scenes when you talked about earlier when we were offline, food as a hedonic pleasure, like something that really there is like just a soulful, purely enjoyment based experience with food that we can have. Well, then when you get into the restaurants at that level, you're talking about food as art, right? Food as a concept, as
and even there you're talking about like art as in like in terms of beauty, and that, like when you start analyzing like like what is pleasing to us, and like, is there anything better than that? You know, like or more important than that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And like, so at that level, like you luckily I worked with chefs who they're like number one thing, like the food still has to taste amazing. It still has to taste good, not experimental. So there was always that balance, right? So even though we did experimental stuff, the food was still delicious by dictate from the chef. But I realized some of those dishes I was tasting, I was like, dude, this barely has any caloric load in it at all. And it's delicious. And I would eat this happily anytime, right? And I realized that calories don't always mean flavor. Sometimes they do correlate, right? Like you put a bunch of fat in something. I mean, of course it's going to taste great, right? But so calorically dense. Yeah, me too, dude.
It's amazing.
And so, yeah, actually, I've always loved to cook, right? But me in the past was like, it was just like idiot level stuff. At least if you're trying to pay attention to your waistline, like I would find some recipe or some dish, and I'd be like, oh, how can I make this the most retarded, over the top, hedonistic sort of version of this, right? So, I'd end up with like putting 50% more extra calories in it, because I'd add pork belly to it or this or that or whatever, right? And it was fun, right? It's great, and it's fun to show pictures and brag about like this amazing dinner you had. And it was actually a friend of mine who's a chef at a different restaurant. I met him for a couple drinks after work when I was living in New York City, and he kind of called me out. He's like, dude, I've seen your pictures. Like, it's like you can make a game of like how many calories can you throw at a dish, right? And like I get it, it's like challenge food, it's fun, but like you also have this desire to be a healthy, athletic individual. Like, why not just change the game? Why not just make the game like, ooh, how can I make this still taste like a pizza or a cheeseburger or a lasagna, whatever it is that you're jonesing for on a flavor, strictly, enjoyment flavor wise. And then it's like, but make that a healthy or healthy-ish version of that thing, so that your brain says, ooh, hamburger, or ooh, pizza. I'm sating that craving that I have for that quote bad food. But then when you really break down the macros and the calories, you're like, dude, that wasn't bad. I mean, that was honestly like 2 chicken breasts, potato, and some broccoli. That's the same thing. So like I enjoyed this a lot more on this side, and it's just as clean. It's just got a ton of flavor, right? So why not do it if
and
you
then
have
satisfy. Yeah, you get to that satisfied portion of what you were trying to get in the first place, because like from eating, you wanted something. You wanted to get something from eating that thing. You wanted an experience. So give yourself the experience without having to like fill yourself up.
For sure.
In the process. Yeah.
And I think that's a really important cornerstone of satisfaction with food. And obviously, I think as Americans, we can probably admit that we love really big portions, right? And so I think if you train your belly on really big portions, then sometimes you eat what other people from like the UK or Spain or something would consider like a decent portion for a meal or a dish. And like your American belly is kind of like, wow, okay, where's the food? That was cool for a warm up, but like, where are we going from here, right? So part of that is, you know what I mean? So part of that is like sheer volume of food. And you can do that with like lots of vegetables and salads and stuff like that. You make that a cornerstone of a meal, then like overall in total, you still feel full. But then if you don't give yourself that little nugget or that plate of something that just like you just love eating because you love eating it, like that's the other part of satisfaction right there.
Yeah. You don't like, that's one strategy. You just try to have like micronutrient dense food instead of macronutrient dense food, right?
For sure, yeah.
But if you just ate a bunch of micronutrient dense food and you're just like, I got no satisfaction off that, you're still going to go in search of other things. And
totally.
You want to get both of those at the same time. So you want like food that like satisfies the taste craving and the experience that you want, but also that like nurtures your body and satisfies all the other things that you're eating the food for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're right about like the pleasure thing. Like it's like spiritual, but it's also like primitive, and it's also like necessary for life. I mean, like nature did some pretty cool things. It said, it made the greatest pleasures also, or the things that you needed to survive, it made them your greatest pleasures. It's like, smart.
Absolutely. Yeah. And going back to what you said about micronutrient density, that was actually one of the light bulb moments that I had in my own thinking with this, was that, it's a pretty often talked about concept in the health and fitness world, is like micronutrient density per calorie, of the foods, right? And I was like, well, no one's talking about like flavor density. If you could have a unit of flavor, you really can't unless I make this shit up,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Good point, though.
I probably will at some point. It's like, call it flavor units. F you. That's great. So
Yeah.
so how many flavor units per calorie can you cram in a dish, right? No one's talking about that, right? And certain things don't cost you anything, like fresh herbs, ginger, garlic, cilantro, lemongrass, basil, all these things. They cost you absolutely no calories whatsoever. Salt, pepper, these things. Chilies are an amazing thing. I don't know if you like spicy food.
I love spicy food. What Rach considers spicy is like two different things, but yeah, I really like spicy food.
Right. Yeah, I do as well. And and I can geek out for 30 minutes. We'll do that another time about like chili peppers and how amazing they are, and like they what was Indian food or Thai food before chilies came from the New World, had to go all the way through Europe. The Europeans were like, dude, I don't like this. It makes my mouth feel weird, right? Then I went down through Africa and across through Asia, and now like you look at cuisines that are notably spicy like that. Like what did that food look like before the 1600s, right?
Yeah.
It's fascinating on a human cultural level, but like chilies, go back to chilies. Chilies cost you no calories at all, and that adds a ton of flavor to food, and it can be balanced as well. You don't have to like smack yourself in the tongue with a heat hammer, right? It can actually just be like.
That's one of the most annoying things about spicy food to me is when it's so hot that it's not funny, that it doesn't taste good. It's like, you lost me. But before that, it's amazing.
Yeah. No, I used to do the stupid like chili challenge stuff with my friends because I grew up in California, and grew up eating really spicy Mexican food and whatnot as well.
Sure.
But there's an Indian restaurant here in Las Vegas that they have a ghost chili menu where every course is a tasting menu. Every course has ghost chilies in it, which are like over 1 million Scovilles and heat units, right?
Yeah.
And they make you sign a waiver, like a liability waiver, before you eat the food.
Yeah. Probably because you're going to be so mad at them, like as soon as you eat it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty funny.
No, that's the stuff that I just like. You can, if it's going to ruin my day, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. Right.
Yeah, I've done that kind of stuff before. No, but so like kind of what was the impetus that got you here? Like, what was the like you were in martial arts and you were in the restaurant industry. Like, what were like the steps since like what got you out of restaurant and then what got you back into food again?
Well, I mean, my path has always been kind of, marching to the path of a different drummer, you know what I mean? So I never really wanted the traditional.
If you were normal, I wouldn't have invited you on the show. So
exactly right. So for me, I studied music in college. I studied opera at Florida State University. There's a huge, really awesome music school there. And I left Florida State, went to Manhattan and studied voice with a couple of prominent voice teachers when I was in my early to mid 20s. And no one really knew what to do with my voice because it ended up being like a dramatic bass baritone, dramatic bass type of voice, and it matures later. It's really hard to find roles that are not going to kill you as a 25-year-old when you're that old. So I kind of just gravitated away from it. Sure. But that was also the first time that I got really fat. And actually the only time I got really fat, let's be honest, because I got up to a certain point. And the funny thing is I justified it in my head because this goes back to self-image, right? If you view yourself as I'm a big boned individual, it's gonna be hard for that person to lose weight and stay there unless they self-identify with a different
because they think that's who they are. They think of fat as something that they are. It's a part of their identity instead of just something that they have. Like you don't say that you are fingernails. You have fingernails.
Exactly. Yeah.
With that, for some reason, we do it different.
For sure. Absolutely. And I had always, I'd grown up, painfully thin in my teenage years because I was just burning off more calories than I could ever take in, because I was in the dojo like, 5-6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I would have been in there on the 7th, except they were closed on Sundays. Right. Because I'm just an idiot like that. So,
I understand.
And then when I got off and I kind of got away from the daily exercise thing, and I was studying opera, and like, I remember hearing an interview with Pavarotti. He's like, oh, you need to have big girth to have a big voice. I was like, all right, I need to be a big person, right? So I just started, using that as an excuse to pretty much eat everything in sight, and like you can find some good food in Manhattan as well. So yeah, so it's kind of funny. I remember writing this down last year. I was kind of doing some writing on a book, and it's amazing how introspective you get trying to put this down on paper, stuff that maybe you've thought about, but you haven't really analyzed yourself.
Right.
And I remember one time, 2 times with the scale. I've never had like a weird scale relationship, but I purposely didn't have a bathroom scale during that kind of couple of years, right? And I was joking around with a friend of mine, and she's like, "Well, how much do you weigh?" I was like, "Oh, I'm probably around 250, right? I'm 6'4". Like 250 is not good for my frame because I don't have a really big, huge bone structure. So 250 is way too fat already, and I knew that. But I was like, I'm probably 250. I step on the scale, and I was 269. And I was like mortified.
Really? Wow,
mortified, dude. And I looked down at the scale, and I remember making some joke because we'd had dinner earlier. I was like, "Oh, they must have had a lot of heavy metals in that Chinese food, in the fish that we had, right?" I'm like kind of playing it off, but inside I was a little bit hurt, right? I'm looking at the scale, I'm like, "Dude, what did you do?"
Yeah.
And I don't even know what my heaviest weight was that
come to this. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And it was a weird smack in the face from numbers. And I also kind of thought about it later. I was like, dude, if I haven't stepped on a scale this calendar year, I'm like, what was my true heaviest? Like 269, which is the biggest number I happen to see because I was choosing not to track it on purpose, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and at that weight, you could fluctuate, 10, 12 pounds a day. Probably.
Oh yeah, it's insane. Yeah. And so that was kind of like my wake up call. Of course, I was not on a diet the next day, but within the next month, I was like, all right, I need to get this under control. So, and I was also living apart from my family, and I realized that I kind of developed this definitely unhealthy relationship with my weight because I still saw myself as that really young, athletic, live individual. But I felt the need to like be a big, strong guy too. So it's kind of caught between two different things. And neither one was really serving me.
If you're a dude, I think you've been there at some point.
Whether you're 5'5" or 6'4", like you always would like at some point in your like early 20s or late teens, you're like, oh, I want to get big, I want to get strong, whatever. We all go through that thing. But I was living away from my family, was still back in California. But this is before the days of FaceTime and stuff, so no one's seen me, right? And I'm like,
oh, true,
right?
Yeah, so, didn't have anybody to give you a reality check.
Right. And you also can't see how fat someone's getting over the phone. Right. So, and I just, all of a sudden I felt really embarrassed. And that's when I like started getting into like, dude, every stupid fad crash diet, cabbage soup diet, you name it. I've tried every scammy sort of thing. And, and let me be clear, diets work 100% of the time. It's what you do after the diet does not work. Right.
And so exactly. Everything works for 6 to 12 weeks. It's
absolutely,
when you go back to your regular lifestyle. The regular lifestyle is what got you where you were. Like so.
And at that point, the band's pulled so tight when you let it go, it snaps back so hard, dude. But I remember going in this stupid crash diet before I went home for Christmas one year because I was just, and I still showed up at like 245, but I was just like, I was embarrassed of myself, right? So I did, and that's when I got in this weird thing of like crash diets and in and out of that, whatever. Yeah. And I think over the course of, it's a long time ago, so I don't really remember, but it was a little bit over a year, I got from that 269, 270 area down to 185. And so,
that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. And I also like hadn't been doing any resistance training for years before that point. So I probably put on a little bit of muscle at some point, even if it's only 5 pounds, I don't know what that was, but certainly got a lot stronger in that time. But going back to the scale thing is we all can have our own issues. I think females more than males with scale issues.
Yeah, totally.
But I did get a bathroom scale.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Right. And so I got a bathroom scale, and I would track and made a bunch of progress. And I was feeling energetic. I was really happy about the stuff. Dude, I stepped on the scale one morning and it read 199, and I about had a freaking panic attack because then you go back to self-identity. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You go back to self-identity, and I'm like, oh, I'm a big, strong guy. And I was like, I have to be over 200 if I'm going to be a big, strong guy, right? It's a number. It doesn't mean
especially at 6'4". Like some people hear 200 pounds and they're like, oh my gosh, that's huge. At 6'4", that's a fairly thin.
Exactly. That wasn't pretty. I was
it doesn't take much,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so down at my belly, I couldn't deal with it. I took a good like 3 or 4 weeks off the diet because I just like I had this just short circuit in my head. I was like, all right, what do I really want? And I was like, all right, I set out on this path and I've made a ton of progress, but I've still got a little bit of flab on my lower abs. I'm going to get down and get to like really good shape just for my own edification.
Yeah.
So after a little bit of a diet break, which strategically ends up being, we're finding research now that diet breaks are actually a great long-term strategy, right?
You,
so I did an accidental.
You almost have to
break.
have them. It's almost silly not to. Like science and logic are playing in tandem there. Usually that's a pretty good sign.
For sure. And I leveled out at 185, and that was like for my muscle at the time, that was where I needed to be to show really lean, right?
Yeah.
And I lived that way for a while, and then of course life happens, and I did this dance for years after that, of especially when I got really involved in the fine dining world. I chose to go away from music because no one really knew what to do with my voice at that point. So I got involved in the restaurant world and got involved in wine. I was working at some really amazing restaurants, and again, then food becomes not only pleasure, but it becomes adventure. Like, I've never had this dish. I've read about this. I've never had it. Let's do it. And then a taste becomes a dish, which becomes a repeat. And so 235 was always like my bounce point, where like if I would let myself go for a while, I'd go up to about 235, and I don't know if it was psychological or physical, but that's where I kind of settled in. And then I'm like, all right, it's time to lean out again. I did this dance for years before I finally kind of just decided that I wanted to live a different way, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, long story to get back around to when I got, in really great shape in my 40s, was I had a really good friend and colleague die completely unexpectedly, and he was way younger than I was. So it makes you kind of reevaluate like what you're doing with your life, and
I bet.
a couple of glasses of wine and a lot of talking with friends about like, what do you want to do? So I knew that as an instrument, I had a world-class instrument as a singer, but I had never expressed that part of my life. And so I was like, all right, I contacted some people that I had worked with or that were in my circle back in the day, went out for an evaluation when I still was working in Las Vegas. And, the consensus of a couple of different people was like, look, you could take this as far as you choose to take it. Right.
Sure.
And so, but I was a little bit older. So I was like, I gotta do everything right, because I can't be the wunderkind that's like all of a sudden the big story about like the hot up and coming kid, right? So, I went back and I
worked the Cinderella story. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, you're like almost like the phoenix coming out of the fire story, right? So still
a good one.
And for at that time I was like late 30s, and just about to turn 40, and I was like, it's not too old for my voice type. But it's definitely, like you said, not the Cinderella story. So I left my career midstream. I was making really good money. I was happy doing what I was doing, but not really like that kind of deep fulfillment level.
Sure.
Moved to Manhattan. Was working literally for peanuts when I first moved back. I mean, it was horrible.
Bad place to be living for peanuts.
Oh, dude, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the rooms, like I've got a pretty big wingspan, but I literally on one axis could almost touch both walls in my bedroom at the same time. On the short axis, there's like a prison cell. I think the prison standards are actually slightly higher than that room. As a marketing strategy for a singer, like the opera world's a kind of a funny place because it's becoming much more photogenic, and like there's high definition broadcast. So like being a relatively attractive person on stage and a good figure is now more important than ever. Because if you're in a 4,000 seat auditorium and it's not broadcast, from 30 rows back, you can't tell if the person's 10% body fat or 30. It's just like it is what it is in a costume, right? But you also have these stage directors is like, it's like, oh, it'd be so hot if we could have so and so take his shirt off at this dramatic moment, and like, of course, and then if you're jacked, like everyone's like, oh my God, there's an opera singer, he's in really good shape, right? So you have that little bit of marketing advantage, right?
Yeah.
And so I had very much like a kind of a shallow outside motivation for getting in really good shape, but that was my motivation.
Yeah.
And so I'd actually come back to Las Vegas to save up money, and I was moving to Germany to go work in the fest system there, because they have their theater system is, first of all, they have a ton of opera theaters in the German speaking nations. So Germany, Austria, Switzerland, but especially Germany. And they're almost like museums are considered here, where they are privately funded, but they're also subsidized by the government as a cultural, sort of service to their heritage, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of opportunity. You can get hired as a house singer at a fest contract and work a 9-month season and sing a dozen roles. Maybe 6 are leading, 6 are supporting. But the amount of the amount of experience you can get in a calendar year in one season is immense compared to how we run our system in the US.
Okay.
We have a ton of talented singers in the US and very little opera productions at a high level, and they're all scratching for the same work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I came back to Las Vegas and I was like, all right, I'm going to get in insane shape. And, you know, we had done that and was maintaining that for a long time. I had kind of gotten addicted to like just the fitness lifestyle in general. Like if I didn't work out for a couple of days, I was itching to get back in the gym, right? You know, that feeling.
Yeah, you made it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just part of your, it's like moving meditation. It's like, it's good for your soul. Right. And, yeah, long story short, you know, we all have that file. Stuff happens. You have to put that stuff into. I was actually coming home from the gym. It was like 2:00 in the morning, and like, what's the thing? The insurance stat that they talk about, like you're likely to get into an accident, like literally like 3 blocks from your house, right?
Right. Yeah.
Within 3 blocks of your house. I was literally turning off of the major street to go to my house, the next intersection. Last second, this lady pulls out. She's a drunk driver, pulls out in front of me at the last second. Literally, the only thing I can do is avoid hitting her driver's side door. And I'm in a huge. I had actually borrowed my buddy Thomas's truck, thank God, for situational reasons. And I wasn't in my little tiny car. If that had been a very little different day for me, because she's in a huge luxury SUV. So I broadside her, and thank God I didn't hit her door, because I don't know if she'd be here if I had, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, I walked away, but I had an injury to my abdomen. I had like something like a hernial tear in my abdomen. I had a surgery to correct that, and that was fine. Yeah. But I also had a little damage to my right vocal cord. And I don't really know why it happened, whatever, but that was like one of those things. Like that morning that I practiced before I went to work and before I went to the gym that night, that was the last day that I would sing at that level. But you know, you don't have that. Yeah,
that's wild. Yeah.
And that's the branching point. You don't even know it until a later date. So I took like 3 months off because my stomach hurt so bad from the injury, right?
Sure.
So I just took time off from singing. I didn't, you know, I knew how to sing. My vocal groups were very well worked in. So I took the time off from singing, but then when I came back to it, it just wasn't working. I was like, dude, what's going on? All right, whatever. It's a little bit funky when you come back to it. It's like any coordination, right? It's like a gymnast takes 3 months off of you know, working out, and his handstands are a little clumsy coming back into it. You know, and it gets
a little rusty. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just never got better. Like, and so long story short, I had this like right on the edge of the right vocal cord. There's a little pocket of tissue from a scar, basically, that it will fill with fluid. So if you hear me sing for the first 3 to 5 minutes, you might not know there's anything wrong with my voice. But as the fluid in the blood comes into this area from the warming up process, which is there actually is a physical warming up process to the voice, as I sing and the vocal folds fill with the lymphatic fluid and whatnot and blood, that pocket of tissue actually expands because it fills with lymphatic fluid. And then all of a sudden you have 2 vocal folds, which are weighing 2 different masses. You can't individually pull them, right? So you pull them both, or you put them back, right? Okay. So you have one that's trying to vibrate at a slightly slower pitch because it weighs a little bit more right on the edge, right? And so you get this little, it's like an irregularity that comes into the voice. But, you know, again, can I sing better than the average dude? Probably. You know, I can't sing at that level. I can't be on stage, and I certainly can't sing for a 4-hour opera, because I mean, it's just like the stamina is just not there.
Sure.
So I had, going back to that outside influence, like kind of that rather shallow, because it wasn't like, I want to be healthy, I want to be this, and I don't want to put somebody my identity. I was like, no, I kind of want to game the system. I want to look great if I have to take my shirt off.
You want to give yourself every opportunity, every advantage. Yeah.
And that was gone. Like that was my motivation, right? And thank goodness I didn't go off the deep end, which could have been the other path, right? I'm like, all right, I get to eat pizza.
Right? Just get to be fat and happy.
Right. Yeah, totally. And that was a very real possibility as well. But like I had a pretty, you know, a great time of introspection. And I had actually had a voice surgery with a doctor up in Oregon. I sought out one of the specialists in that surgery, and like went up several times to see him, and like had every expectation that it wasn't a 100% deal, but it was more likely than not that we would be able to fix that injury. But you have to be very careful. It's a complex area. It's basically there's a mucosal layer, which is basically.
All right, guys. Hopefully Elias comes back on here quick.
I can see you.
Well, hopefully Elias comes back on here quick, but because I want to hear more about what he has going on there. But what while I'm going here, you can follow Elias on Instagram at Flavor Hacker Fitness, and he has his own Facebook public channel that is just Elias Notus. So it's ELIAS NOTUS. And he's messaging me now. But it's pretty cool stuff. Like the other stuff that we're going to talk about if we don't get a chance to actually hop on here. Sorry about those guys. Technical stuff. Oh, is he back? Are you back?
Buddy? You there?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry. I could still hear you and see. I was like, I'm here.
I swear I'm here. I swear.
Yeah. So anyway, just to wrap up that story, I went up to Oregon. It was a year ago, August, that I had a surgery to try to like once and for all clear that injury.
Yeah.
And you have to be really careful. I mean, like you end up like not being able to talk well. I mean, like have a really raspy voice if they mess something up, right? And that's why I wanted to go see. I paid out of pocket, and insurance wasn't covering any of this, right? I paid out of pocket to have this surgery with like one of the best people.
Sure.
And
you might as well. It's how you make your living, so you should.
Yeah, totally. And so had the surgery. I came back to see him for the follow up the next morning, and I could see like he's got the scope down my throat, looking at the cords, and I could see this huge big screen TV in front of me that has the laryngoscopy image on it. And I was looking at the cords, and I knew what they should look like post surgery, and it like didn't look right. And I was like, and I couldn't ask him. I couldn't talk for 30 days, right? That was part of the recovery. Like you literally cannot talk. No whispering.
That's crazy right there.
Right? No whispering, got an instant monk mode, right? So I wrote it out on a pad and asked him, like, did the surgery go okay? And that's when he broke the news. And he said, yeah, surgery was fine. But I was not able to safely remove the damaged tissue without risking further injury.
Oh, okay.
And that's his responsibility. He shouldn't, right? I wouldn't have wanted him to if I had been conscious to ask him, right?
Yeah.
So
do no harm.
The end result is now I've got 30 days ahead of me of basically being in my own little world of not being able to communicate freely with the outside world. I had a little app on my phone so I could type and then it would talk for me. And I had a pad with me at all times so I could write down and ask for stuff, right?
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that was an interesting experience, but couldn't work as well. So like I had a lot of time to myself. And kind of, that was the point. I was like, all right, what do I want to do next? Like what makes me happy? I was like, I don't think that I can imagine my life.
At that point, was it just super clear, like singing's not going to be a thing?
Singing couldn't be an option. I mean, could I be a folk singer? Maybe, I don't know. It doesn't really, it doesn't appeal to me, right? Like opera is such and maybe it's because of the athletic background. Like opera is like part art and it's part athleticism as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so, it was very clear that singing was not going to be a part of the future. So at that point, I was like, all right, I'm in a really unique position. Like I can create this next thing.
Yeah.
I can just kind of go along with my path that I've been very fortunate on. People just have been like throwing me opportunities in the restaurant world. So, and I realized I was like, I want food to be a part of it, but I also want fitness and health to be a part of it as well. So, and that was the genesis of the thought process. And actually, when I couldn't speak, I wasn't actively training anybody at that point. Outside of a couple of friends, like I would give them advice if they asked for stuff, right? But it was never not a structured training thing. But I had a friend reach out to me when I still couldn't talk a couple weeks after the surgery, like, hey, dude, like you're always in such sick condition. Can you help me get in good condition? I want like someone to work with me. I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And I was like, it's like I don't really believe in the universe telling you what to do, sort of thing. But
sure,
when you have something like that happen, which seems like a really big coincidence.
Yeah, when you take advantage of opportunities. Yeah,
totally. And I'd already decided by the time that text message came to me that I wanted to walk that path. I just didn't know what it would look like yet, right?
Yeah, I mean,
so I mean, what when you started the whole thing with Grit Gym, I mean, like I'm sure it looks different now than when you went into it. Like, what am I going to get into here, right?
Yeah, I mean, you grow to become the person that you wanted to be, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then situations change along the way too, and like you adapt as you go. yeah, so that was the cornerstone for it. And I was like, all right, where's my unique skill set? What do I have that other people don't have and that they might need, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, I can cook amazing food. I know more about food than any healthy person should ever know about food. It's ludicrous,
Sure.
right? I mean, like, and some of it's obsession based, and some of it's technique based, whatever. So,
Obsession is a positive thing. I know it gets tossed around as like people are like, you're obsessive, like it's bad. It's like, yeah,
right,
everything
yeah,
that's ever come to me that is good is because I am a nut. Like I'm crazy, like
for sure.
I'm crazy obsessive. So like I look at it and I'm like, obsession is a gift.
Yeah, no, it's true, and you can make a great argument that every human event that moved the
Yep.
needle forward technologically or culturally, like it was from some obsessive individual that like did that for us. So
yeah, nobody just fell into it. Like they were
yeah,
they obsessively pursued the thing that they wanted, that
for
or
sure.
they thought that they could provide, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And then for me, I realized that whenever I went off the wagon with my own fitness and diet, it was two cravings, right? It wasn't like, oh, I'm hungry, I need something in my belly. Well, go get a bowl of brown rice. I don't know. Like
nobody in the United States is starving. Like
exactly.
when homeless people are overweight, like nobody's starving.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Um, and but like, all right, it was craving based. Like sometimes you just crave something. Like I just want like macaroni and cheese.
Yep.
I know there's like barely any nutritive value, but I want macaroni and cheese, right?
Yep.
So, excuse me. And I was like, well, I mean, let's just make this like a game. Let's just say, all right, how can I make something that hits all the flavor, texture, smell, visual triggers for macaroni and cheese? But maybe, when I started looking up calories for stuff, and I think I know a lot about food and calories and stuff, and I would get on the websites of these lower level chain restaurants that I've been to with friends, and like, okay, I remember seeing they have the macaroni and cheese was okay, it wasn't great. It was like a little dish like this big, dude. And it's like 1,250 calories. I'm like, how? That's like a science experiment. I don't even know how I would get 1,250 calories in that dish.
Yeah.
I just put a stick of butter in and call it a day. But I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? And start looking at like what we eat habitually. Like, okay, certainly I can make that same macaroni and cheese for 600. It turns out I can make it for 250 or 300 calories and still have it taste pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's part of the equation. Like, as well as I do, calories are not the only part of the equation, but they're a huge part of it, right?
Oh yeah, you cannot discount the calorie. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You can't just be like never count. Like I don't think most people don't need to count calories, but at the same time, they're a unit of measure that we should respect.
Exactly. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, that like at the end of the day, that's why all those silly things about like the Twinkie diet and the McDonald's diet, like, yeah, if you're taking in less
diet is one of my favorites that I ever heard. They're like, why did I lose 12 pounds on the peanut butter cup diet? I'm like, well, there's good reasons for that.
Exactly.
Why did you try it in the first place?
Yeah.
Like, all you ate was peanut butter cups for like 2 weeks. But yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, so if you can scratch your itch for that tempting food, that temptation trigger food, for as long as it doesn't send you off the rails. Like I have an issue with sugar. I'll be perfectly honest with that. I have a wicked sweet tooth, and if I go off the rails, sometimes it's by choice. Like, all right, I'm just going to let loose today, and I get it. But like when I see the addictive pattern like come into my own behavior, it's around sugar. Like, and we know that it hits the same pleasure centers in the brain that heroin does, right? To a much less degree.
You still have to confront it, like it
totally.
Like that's the thing. Like addiction doesn't mean impossible. I think like some people look at it like that. They're like, "Well, I'm addicted. There's nothing I can do." It's like bullshit. Yes, you can.
Right. Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, and that's kind of where the genesis of that whole concept came. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm putting together the beta course right now.
Awesome.
I'm looking to get about 100 people in there, and then like have those people, as silly as it sounds, like have them help me co-create the program. Because sometimes you get so much depth of expertise in an area. Sometimes I don't know what the other person doesn't know, because it seems like what I don't know. How do you not know that?
Like constantly.
Yeah, because you learned that 15 years ago. It's buried so far down in the subsystems in your thought process that like I had this happen with a training client, and I was trying to work with her, and she's like, "What's a macronutrient?" I was like, "What do you mean, what's a macronutrient?"
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like,
I do that. Like I'll say scapula, and people are like, "What's a scapula?" And I'm like that's, to me, that's like saying like you don't know what your forehead is. It's like
right, yeah.
how do I
You were the
process
dude that
this?
sat around and read Grey's Anatomy in high school, like me, right? So like, did you go through the old anatomy textbooks when you were
Oh yeah,
younger?
totally. I've read so many of these books that read like stereo instructions that I don't. Yeah, like functional anatomy is one of those things that's like for people who geek out on that kind of stuff. It's pretty hilarious. Like,
Right. Yeah. And you
it's
started
just
like
like
talking about all the minor muscles in the forearm and hand, and like, why do you know that? Like, you don't need to know
yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. It is, at some point I almost look at myself and I'm just like, you've got to calm down. Like this is just
Yeah.
too. Yeah, but
Yeah. Like you said, obsession is when it's directed in a positive way is a good thing.
yeah,
So
totally.
for sure.
But
I remember when we were talking in Boise, you were a
right.
fan of and you were actually talking to someone else and indirectly, but I remember picking up a couple of things that like, and I know your stance is a little bit like anti-diet, right? So, but
Yeah,
you had mentioned like, dude, it's a bar. Why would you eat a bar if you can eat real food? Like sometimes you have to have a bar if there's no other option, and
sure.
it can fill the gap. But like, I know that you definitely kind of favor real food over,
Yeah,
the food type stuff.
yeah,
But I'm also my other project that I'm kind of stoked about right now, and again, because I have this wicked sweet tooth, is I'm working on an all-purpose protein baking mix. So like there are a lot of protein pancake mixes out on the market, and like everyone at my circle of friends are like, oh, the Kodiak cakes, and I got all stoked about Kodiak cakes. And I went and saw it at the store. They were doing a little demonstration at Costco when I was there picking up some stuff. I was like, oh, cool, Kodiak cakes. I was like, they're okay. They're not great, whatever. And I looked at the box and I was like, this is a protein pancake, right? I looked at the protein, I looked at the macros, I looked at the ingredients. It's like, dude, this is like when Oreos sold a high protein Oreo and like there was barely any protein in it. They like threw like a sprinkle, pixie dust sprinkle of whey protein in the recipe and called it a protein Oreo or a protein Cheerio.
it's like the vegan protein bars that are like 6 grams of protein and
Right.
like 30
And
grams
some
of
of them,
sugar, and it's like, wait a minute here.
and some of them actually tout the stats, but they're touting it to a relatively ignorant crowd. They're like, as much protein as an egg. Well, everybody knows that eggs have protein, right?
Yeah,
An egg has 6 grams of protein, right? So like as much protein as an egg is not a selling point to someone who actually knows something about like
right.
how much I might need to get in the course of a day to support my strength training, right?
Yeah.
So
It's just yeah, the misleadings of marketing, right? Like you definitely don't want to use that as like you want to look at them as selling points, not as
right.
like factual like information that you slug in your head that you use to like navigate your health choices. You know,
For
like
sure. For sure.
you can get yourself wrapped up in some silly stuff there.
Absolutely. And again, so scratching my own itch, I was like, all right, I wanted like, I'd seen like some of the recipes that Quest Protein had done on their blog and stuff. And the stuff always looks good, but like it rarely tasted really amazing to me.
Sure.
But it was cool because they were really trying to serve the market and give people like me who have a sweet tooth something that could feel and taste like dessert a little bit,
Yep.
and not go completely off the rails, right?
Right.
And so that's when I started playing with the protein pancake mix. But then I was like, okay, so I'm making pretty good protein pancakes, and I was like, okay, I'm making pretty good waffles. I was like, what else can I do with this stuff? So I made like a savory version and a sweet version.
Oh, cool. Nice.
And so the savory version, I was making like little flatbreads and crepes, and I even made a like something that like served like sandwich bread. It was not that great. That was the one that I was like, meh. Everything else was pretty awesome. You know what I mean? But I was like, I was making all kinds of cool stuff. One thing we didn't talk about, sorry to backtrack for 1 second, as a kind of a belief breaking experiment for me, because a lot of people, when I would try to explain to them what I was working on, I was like so excited about it. I was like, dude, you can't, like, there's no way you can eat pizza and burgers and macaroni and cheese and get in good shape. And you and I just had the conversation about, yeah, if you watch your calorie balance, you absolutely can. Right. And like, hopefully you can get enough micronutrient in there so you don't end up sick at the end.
There's a big difference between one piece and a whole pizza. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so I looked at it, I was like, all right, let's do a challenge for myself. I said, and originally it was supposed to be 4 weeks. It ended up being 7 weeks just because that's what I needed to get in really top shape. And I also didn't want to do it like in a totally like robot mode, where I had a couple of important celebrations. I was like, all right, I'm going to take a night off, right? Celebrate this person's birthday properly. I'm not going to go off the rails, but I'm
You're
not going to
like,
sit.
I can't eat that cake.
Right,
Sorry.
exactly. I didn't.
Yeah, you don't
I've been there so many times. I've been there so many times. I didn't want to do that anymore, right? So I made that part of the rules for me. Like, all right, if there's something I need to enjoy, I'm going to enjoy it.
Right.
But it took me 7 weeks. But I did a little ask campaign through a few different avenues, and I said, okay, so what are your top 3 favorite cheat foods? If you were on a diet or you're eating healthy and you had a free day or a free meal, something you felt you couldn't have when you were being healthy, what would be your top 3 cheat foods? And it was really interesting. It was really instructive.
What'd you find?
And it was a lot of the stuff that you would expect from Americans, right? So it was like burgers, pizza, macaroni and cheese, ice cream. But I kind of combined a couple of things. I heard a lot of different things in like typical Mexican fast food, Mexican type stuff. So tacos and burritos, I kind of put in one thing together.
That makes sense. They're basically
milkshakes,
just a different
basically different shapes of the same awesome stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of lumped milkshakes and ice cream together because I heard a lot of those answers together.
Yeah.
But the thing that was funny is that depending if the person was like indoctrinated in the keto lifestyle or they were indoctrinated in the low fat lifestyle, they're like, oh, I want to have a steak. Like, why couldn't you have a steak? Like, just choose the right cut and you're going to have steak all day long, right? You can't have a ribeye and eat the fat gristle off the stuff. That's not a good idea, right? It's delicious, but and then the other person's like, oh, I'd want to have rice. I was like, why can't you have rice? Like, well, I know rice isn't healthy. I was like, okay, cool. I mean, like,
there's
but
so
it was
things that are just like kind of out there where, like, if you're full blown keto and you're just like you want rice, and you're full blown vegan and you want a steak, and you're full blown paleo and you want some ice cream, it's just like, oh man, like
totally.
I guess it's providing structure to the person, but at the same time, like they lose me at some point.
Exactly, and the thing that got me was that it was the absolute certainty with which the person responded. And it was always like, oh, I know the potatoes are healthy.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? I know. And so for them, it was a decided fact. And they're going to change it 2 years from now or 6 months from now. They're going to find something else, and they're going to like, I know that butter's not healthy, or I know that whatever.
Their preconceived notion. Yeah, they can't, like salt. Salt was that way like 15 years ago. It was like,
yeah, totally.
Like, you can't use salt on things. It'll kill you. It's like,
right.
Why?
Like, salt keeps you alive. It's awesome. And I agree 100%. But so I did the 7-week challenge, and I said, all right, not only like, and it sounded like a great idea at the time. It was a horrible idea from a lifestyle perspective, right? I said, okay. I said, every meal for every day for the entire time, I have to eat one of these 10 foods, right? Which sounds awesome for the first 3 days. Burgers, pancakes, cake, milkshake, ice cream, had to have something of those things. But my challenge was like, okay, if I'm going to have a milkshake, how do I make it a healthy version of a milkshake, right? So you can see one of the photos that I posted on my Instagram account, which is only like a couple dozen posts on there. It's not like I've been super active, but I did put a lot of the pictures of dishes I had during that time period. Was like a mint chocolate chip protein milkshake. It was delicious. Yeah. And, I'm not going to be cute about it. Was I busting my ass to like burn calories and build muscle and stuff? I was busting my ass every day in the gym. Yeah. So it's not like I wasn't working. It wasn't the Shangri-La, I eat milkshakes and I get jacked sort of like fantasy, right? I was doing the work behind it, and I was watching my calorie balance, and I was tracking all my macros and stuff. So I was dialed in really, really tight. But, I was doing a pretty traditional thing for me. I was eating 5 or 6 times per day. So 5 or 6 times per day, I wasn't in a position where I was able to get food out very often, right? Because the whole thing was like, how can I make the food be healthy, right? Yeah. So I was cooking so much. I was cooking like six meals
like
per day, right?
Job. Yeah.
Yeah, but if I'm not doing that constraint of like, this has to be a burger or a pizza or whatever, I mean, like, dude, I like having a little like bowl of like cream of rice with some protein powder mixed in and some nut butter or some nuts on top. That's totally satifying to me. If you put enough flavor in it, it's actually pretty enjoyable to eat. I don't feel.
And if you take the discipline to be super present with the food.
Yeah. Dude, I totally agree that the research that's coming out on mindful eating and conscious eating is insane, and like stuff I would have never assumed, right?
Yep.
And it's
because I think if you eat on the go, you just or like you eat in front of a screen, or you eat in your car, like you're just putting the stuff in, you never actually feel satisfied because you never actually experienced the food. And
It's
so
almost
then
like
you're going to keep reaching for stuff. You're never going to have that satisfaction.
For sure. And if you look at the research they've done around mindful eating, it's almost like on a certain level, like, yeah, your body took in the calories, it took in the nutrients, it processed it, it digested it, but is it psychological?
Only on a biological level. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about it, like it's almost like it didn't register. You know,
Yep.
they always say that like beverage calories are not registered by the body in a hunger signal way, the same way that solid foods are on the whole, right? Which is why these strongman competitors who have to get 10,000 calories in a day are like doing liquid stuff as well because they don't feel as full. Yeah. It's the same, seems to be the same thing with mindful eating. If you're eating distracted in front of TV, in front of social media, it's almost like your body didn't fully register that you had that food. And you certainly didn't enjoy it the same way.
Yeah, especially like when you add in like high fructose corn syrup doesn't have the same hormonal response. Like we don't, like our hunger hormones don't just necessarily just like say, hey, you just ate, in reference to those, to that, like they're all chemicals on some level, but to that chemical that's going in your body doesn't register the same as, you know, like all the combined factors. And then you add mindless eating on top of it. And then all of a sudden you're putting in way more, you're constantly never feeling satisfied. You never have that pleasure from the food. And it's that, like, talk about a bummer. Like I want to get pleasure from the food that I eat. You know, I want it to be an experience.
Our relationship with food is so complex, and especially for someone like me who's had issues with their weight in the past, and also like with overeating. Like I'll be perfectly honest, like I have been in the past a very big overeater, right? Even with healthy food, you can still get fat on healthy food if you eat enough of it, right? It's
not
just
even hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, depending on who you are, it's not that hard for me anyway. Like I can put down a shitload of food.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I call it, one of the things I always laugh about, like for me, is I call it the last cookie syndrome. And this goes back to distracted eating, right? Yeah. So you got a bag of cookies and you're eating the cookies and you grab the last one, you don't realize it's the last one, you ate it and you reach in for another and it's not there. You're like,
such a
I didn't get to eat and you're like, dude, it was either way with the last cookie. You just didn't know it and to savor it as the last cookie as such when you had it. And like you have the little disconnect. It's like, I didn't get to have the last cookie. Well, yeah, you did. Either way, you just didn't enjoy it, right?
It's you do the same thing with like French fries. Like you get a whole plate of French fries and you're like, you think you have to eat all the French fries. So you're like tripling up the French fries. And really it's just like, why don't you just eat them one at a time, get the same, you know, and then stop.
Right.
When you're done with the French fries. But because it's on the plate, you think you have to eat it, you know, and then you have to be mindless to get there.
And then you go back to like to portion size and like, you know, because I've worked with a lot of people from other countries around the world, like it's always a running joke about how big the portion sizes are in America, and it's true, like it just is.
Yeah.
And going back to restaurants for a second, and not because I love the restaurant world.
Sure.
People don't understand, like, unless it's literally like there are several really good restaurants here in town that are like greens and protein is one of the ones here, and they list macros and calories for everything, and their job is to give you healthy food that you know what you're consuming. Outside of that one little micro niche, which is tiny in the restaurant world, the restaurant's job is not to give you healthy food. The restaurant's job is to give you something so freaking tasty and addictive that you're Snapchatting or Instagramming the photo of the food and bragging to your friends about how that you had it, and then jonesing for like, next time I go to Vegas, I'm going to go and have that restaurant again or that dish or whatever, right? That's their job, is to give you something so over the top that you want to come back and have it.
Yeah, and they can only do that in so many ways, right? They have to add sugar, salt, or fat. You know, like. Oh
my God, yeah. And fat's the one thing. Fat's the one thing you can't see in a dish, right? Yeah. Like you can have a dish of risotto that's roughly the same volume. And one is, and like, because traditional Italian risotto doesn't have a lot of fat in it. They you know, the outside of the starch grain breaks down and gives it that creamy consistency. Now, a French chef's version of risotto is going to be loaded with butter and usually a little bit of cream as well, right? They look about the same.
I like how the French do things. I really like how the French, how they attack their culture around food just in general. But there's a lot to unpack just in that statement.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny when you overhear people what they choose to eat and why they choose to eat it. You know what I mean? But going back to the big plate of French fries, the restaurant also has to give perceived value, right?
Yeah.
So French fries don't cost anything to produce,
so
right?
So
they can give you this enormous bucket of fries that doesn't make any sense unless you're sharing it with two other people, right?
Yeah.
But again, like I grew up in relatively frugal circumstances. We weren't like dirt poor, but like, you know, money was an issue for my parents for a long time. And so I hate wasting food. I hate wasting food.
I do too.
Right?
exact same.
Yeah. And so that of course will sabotage your process unless you feel like bagging up some French fries and going back to them later, which would be disgusting the next day, right?
Which is just this, yeah, and it's just like calories now and calories later. Like it's still
right, exactly.
it's still the same volume. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I want to do some writing about restaurants, but I want to be careful about it because I don't want it to be this like throwing rocks at the restaurant industry. Yeah, I mean, like, because I love that world. I'm part of that world, and I respect it. There's a lot of
and there's nothing wrong with them trying to create perceived value. You know, like grocery stores do the same thing. Everything in a grocery store is designed to get you to buy something, and why shouldn't they? You know, like that's their business. Like they should do that. But
exactly.
Like hopefully they do it in a sense of service to the customer, but the customer also needs to be, have some, you know, enough savvy or conscious thought while they're walking through it that, you know, do I need this? Do I not need this? You know, a little presence of mind goes a long way in both of those scenarios. But
yeah, man. Well, I don't know what kind of food you guys really like, but at some point in the future, we should do some collaboration of like,
totally.
Have you guys give me some a couple of recipes stuff that, because I ask people to do this and they misunderstand the exercise. I think you understand it innately from our conversation.
Sure.
I'll say, hey, send me a recipe of something that you really want to eat, and I'll make a healthier version of it. And they'll send me like a healthy recipe from like,
yeah. That's
it looks horrible. Like my job is to make it healthier, right?
Right.
Like you actually want to eat because it looks awesome and delicious, right?
Yeah, so I'm gonna send you like a Hot Pocket.
Exactly, right? I mean, I don't know. We can probably make a Hot Pocket, right?
I'm joking around. It's always funny when people want to come in and they like try to impress you, and they're like, "Well, I only eat the lean Hot Pocket," and it's like, okay, great.
Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Whatever.
Right. I'm not gonna lie. I've had my fair share of Hot Pockets, but I think they're in that like 16 to 18-year-old category, right? So
yeah,
it's been a while.
I think I was in single digits, or maybe I don't know. I was I was at least a kid when I was eating Hot Pockets.
Exactly.
Yeah, back when you probably shouldn't be, you know, starting an oven, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. I'd love to do that. I'd have to think on that. Like I'd have to give you some really tough ones because I'd want to like pick out my like least healthy things that I like to eat and then send them to you and gamify it out. That'd be cool.
Yeah. And it's funny because like, you know, I'll say virtually any food because I'm sure there are foods like braised pork belly. Well, unless you use a different cut, it's going to be pretty much the same thing, right? You can't use the magic wand and make it something it's not. But you know, I made some.
A brisket's always going to be pretty fatty, you know. Like there's certain
exactly. But one of the things you can do is like you can choose a different cut that has less fat and do a braise on it. And if you do it the right way, one of the tricks I like to do is add some gelatin back in the dish. Because if you part of what you from like fatty braising cuts generally have a lot of connective tissue as well, right? So when you slow cook that, connective tissue breaks down and gives you like
that makes a lot of sense.
Gloopy sort of texture when you're doing like especially with like a taco filling or something, right? Well, if you take a little bit of just powdered beef gelatin, dissolve it in some water or a little bit of the sauce, throw it back in the pot and let that incorporate, and like it gives it a certain amount of mouthfeel. Like part of that thing that you're missing from the richer cut comes back in, but like gelatin like costs you virtually no calories. It's just neutral protein, right? So yeah, well, let's work on a couple of dishes. That'll be fun.
I will
experiment.
Yeah, I'll send you some as soon as I think of them. I do need to get going though. I got a client in like 27 minutes. So, but I got to drive there too. So, but no, this has been awesome, man. Thanks for doing this. Is there any other like kind of words of wisdom that you want to get across before we jet off?
I don't know if I'm the guy for words for wisdom, but you know,
bomb on everybody.
Right, exactly. No, I think like my big platform is trying to convince people that fitness, like having an awesome body and eating awesome food, is not an either or equation, but that's how we've been trained.
Couldn't agree more.
Either you have an amazing physique, and you're strong and you're healthy and you are super disciplined and you never eat anything bad, or it's a once a week cheat meal, right?
Yeah.
Or you can have an awesome lifestyle and eat a lot of tasty foods and go like culinary adventuring. Like, dude, you can do both of those if you approach them the right way. Like, can you go out to like the amazing restaurant every night of the week for a year? Probably not. It's not a good idea. right?
Yeah.
But you can like once or twice a week go like have an amazing meal and like just watch your stuff the other days, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
that's what I would say. Just like don't accept that lie. Don't accept the fact that like you can either be fit or you can have awesome food. You can do both those things.
Yeah, because it just becomes a scapegoat so easy, where it's just like, well, I guess I'll never be able to do that because I don't want to live like, it's like, no, you don't. It doesn't mean it's not an either or. It can be a both. Yeah,
for sure.
Totally.
Absolutely.
But, and then where can people follow you?
So under my name, Elias Notus, on Facebook, I have a public figure page there that I'm going to start documenting. My transition this year is all about going off of counting calories and macros and just kind of like living. I don't want to say instinctually, because instinctually my body wants to be like 300 plus pounds. That's what I've found, right?
Yeah.
But eating more like freestyle, right? And just kind of enjoying it and taking it as it comes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can find me there. And then also my Instagram account is Flavor Hacker Fitness.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. This has been really fun.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it. I got to get running right after this, but I'll here in about an hour, I'll come back on and type some stuff up and get back to you. Send it to you.
All right.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, Elias. Yeah.
All right. Take care,
guys. Please like, comment, share, and we'll see you next time. All right. See ya.